what if anything was the premise or pretense of even embarking on this endeavor? I know that you've done some writing about it already, but I mean, you know,
I'd been going to Afghanistan since the mid-90s when the Civil War was happening. It's a country that I've come to care about tremendously. I was there in 2000 with the Northern Alliance, 2001 when they took Kabul. And then in 2005 I was with the U.S. military for the first time, and I was really amazed at their professionalism, their dedication, and I was increasingly worried that what we were doing wasn't working and that Afghanistan was going to fall into the abyss again. And in 2007 I thought if Battle Company I'd been with Battle Company in 2005, 173rd Airborne. I thought if they go back to Afghanistan, I refused to cover Iraq. I just boycotted Iraq. I thought it was a terrible decision on the part of the Bush administration. But Afghanistan I felt differently about. I thought if Battle Company goes back, I want to follow one platoon for a whole deployment. And I want to write a book, I want to make a documentary that doesn't discuss the broader war. Plenty of people are doing that very, very well. I've done that at different points. I want to do something that communicates what it's like to be a soldier in combat, period, end of sentence. Like what it feels like, the emotional consequences for young men of being in combat for a year. And so I was lucky enough to partner with Tim Hetherington, and we did a total of 10 one-month trips, but 10 trips between the two of us. I wish I'd been there longer, but it was just enough to really get a kind of comprehensive look at their existence.
Well, how much control could you exert over where you went?
I wanted to be with Battle Company, and Battle Company was in the Korengal. I'd never even heard of the Korengal Valley, so I wasn't exerting control. I told the Public Affairs Office in Bagram I wanted to be with Battle Company. They checked it out with the battalion commander, no problem. They probably read my work from 2 years earlier and thought that I was a fair, it was a fair analysis of things. I was fair-minded, and so starting in June 2007, there I was.
Obviously, they had to approve of you being in with them, but I'm wondering, how much, if at all, did you guys have to sort of prove yourselves, or make sure that you let them know that you weren't going to be like an obstacle for them to do their jobs, or invasive in the process of them doing their jobs?
I mean, the Public Affairs Office gives approval to virtually everyone to embed. It's up to the officers on the ground to assess whether you're physically capable of doing the things the soldiers will be doing. If you're going to cover a logistics unit, you'll just be driving around in transport trucks on V's. Obviously, you don't have to be in very good shape. If you're going to be with Battle Company in the Korengal Valley, you better be in pretty good shape. And so, as soon as you get there, pretty much everyone just sort of like scrutinizing you, like, are you going to slow us down? Are you going to cause a problem? Are you going to get someone killed? Because you can't keep up. We got to slow down, and like you dehydrate, and we have to medevac you, and then it's like they're all thinking that way, not only about the journalists who come in, but about each other. And if one of the soldiers is not in good shape, it gets noticed, it gets dealt with. So journalists are no exception. And Tim and I have covered wars. I mean, my first war was in 1993, and so I have a lot of experience, and I'm in good shape. And after a trip or so, they realized that whatever was going to happen, we weren't going to cause a tactical problem. And trip after trip, we just got closer and closer to those guys. And so there really was no issue. I've heard that with some journalists, they have to say, look, you can't go out on patrol, you're not up to it.
Well, what was sort of the first moment that you realized that this was going to be sort of a different experience than the other sort of embedded experiences that you had, if there was a moment like that?
When I was heading down there, I read in the Stars and Stripes newspaper that they'd taken their first casualty. They took their first casualty on the first day of their mission, first day of the deployment. Brigade Sergeant Major's son, 19-year-old Timothy Momoto, was shot in the head. killed on the first operation that they did in the valley. And I was heading down there. I was like, damn, something's happening down there. Like, and I got there. The first thing that happened, we got ambushed. We got into an hour-long firefight, and we went on some pretty brutal patrols that lasted 24 hours, and just, you know, put the men physically at the very, very upper limits of their capabilities. And I just never seen anything like that. I didn't know that was happening in the war on terror. You know, you think of the U.S. military as all kind of technology heavy and mechanized, and this is like fighting, you know, men on foot with very heavy loads on their back, you know, in a lot of heat, climbing mountains and digging in and fighting. You know, I mean, it was pretty old-fashioned, and that I understood that I figured that out within a few days. You know, and it was just going to keep getting. I didn't know, but it was going to get worse from there. But I was pretty surprised.
Well, suffice it to say that, you know, the people who are shooting at the company are not discriminating at who they are shooting at. But how does your experience trying to document what they do differ from them just doing their jobs? I mean, do you have to put yourself in a different position, like even just geographically than them in order to capture it, or you just?
No. I mean, I didn't have to deal with the moral complications of shooting at other human beings. Mm-hmm. But if you're on a patrol and it gets ambushed, you're just getting shot at like everybody else. You're taking cover like everybody else. When you're bounding between positions, you're running like everybody else. Like you're effectively a soldier. You just don't have a weapon.
Well, how difficult or easy is it to maintain sort of a composure to be able to sort of keep recording and documenting what's going on around you, rather than just, you know, finding a comparatively safe corner and curling up and hoping that the shooting stops?
You know, it's funny. The camera is a kind of psychological refuge. Like, no one, if you're a writer and you're in an ambush, like, nobody takes notes during a firefight. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's impossible. Like, which means that as a print reporter, you have nothing to do. And if you have nothing to do in a time like that, you're terrified. And the thing that really effectively counters fear is being busy, being focused on something, being focused on a task. And, you know, I've been in firefights where, you know, the lieutenant would give people, or the platoon sergeant would give people tasks, not dangerous tasks, but just give them tasks so that they were focused on something. Because if you're just sitting there, fear can really take over. And so with the camera, that was what I did. Like, that was my task. And it made the combat psychologically way easier to have that job to do.